Coming up on tonight's episode, I play tug of war with a van, I destroy my thumb with a hammer, ow, and I do this. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we are working on the Ford Transit Connect camper again. In the last video you would have seen we did a lot of cosmetic work on the van. So you can see the wheels are now nice and silver, it's been cleaned up nicely, and we polished the headlights too, which is still looking really, really good. There's still a few more cosmetic bits we need to do, probably in a later video like this dent here, but generally, you know, it's looking pretty okay for what it is. So today we're going to be focusing on some of the mechanical things that are wrong with this. So I'm going to sort the exhaust leak, which is just a connection from the cat to the sort of mid pipe. And I'm also going to be tackling the front right wheel bearing today. So we'll start with the exhaust leak and we'll go from there. In the words of Mighty Car Mods, first step, jack up your car, or van in this case. So that I can jack up the front of the van all together, I'm jacking it up on the front subframe, which is a little difficult to do because I haven't really got much room to pump the jack up. So I'll persevere doing little pumps, I suppose. Yeah, this is going to take a while. So before I continue, I am just going to double check the handbrake's on. The rear wheels are already chocked, so it shouldn't roll away, but make sure the handbrake's on. I'm going to do that now. It in fact was not on, so yeah, make sure your handbrake's always on before jacking up the car or van. This is where I've jacked it up from, front subframe, and that allows you to lift up the front equally. And then what I'll do to make it safe is pop the axle stand under the frame rail here. So on cars you can't generally do this, but this is a nice solid frame rail on this van. And a bit of wood on top just to protect the frame rail. I'll do the same on the other side. So here we are, the van's jacked up nice and high, and this reveals where our exhaust leak is coming from. So the leak is coming from right here. So you can see there's some old exhaust paste on here where somebody's just tried to patch it. Not going to say who that somebody is, but it hasn't worked. It's just blown it straight out, probably because it wasn't left long enough. This paste is actually quite good generally if you give it enough time to cure. It looks like there's a missing gasket in between this pipe and this mid pipe here. My idea was to try and fit this gasket. This is just a universal gasket that I've got off eBay. I think it was $1.99 or $2.99, something like that. Not very much at all. And just put it in between, sandwich it in between and see if that fixes the issue. But looking at it now, it is possible that it won't work. But I'm gonna give it a go. So I'm gonna, if I can, buzz off these nuts right here and separate the two pieces, and hopefully we can stick the gasket in between. Okay, so it looks like it's a 17mm bolt and a 17mm nut. It's still really weird how this has happened, because the whole exhaust system doesn't really look too bad rust-wise. So yeah, it's very strange that this has happened. I wonder if it was replaced with a cheap aftermarket part at some point. Fingers crossed. Okay, that went fairly smoothly. Now the other side. Okay, that wasn't too bad. These bolts aren't too terrible for being exhaust bolts. Anyone who's done this before will know that exhaust nuts and bolts and threads, studs or what have you, turn to dust after a certain amount of time. So yeah, this doesn't look too bad really. So if we just separate the two pieces now. There we go. There's our old gasket, which is just completely flat. So I'm hoping that this nice new gasket has a bit of thickness to it will help. Let's give it a go. Well, that fits that absolutely perfectly. Does it fit this side though? Looks like it does. That might be a good fix. Right, before we put the new gasket in, I've got my old favourite little wire brush. I'm just going to use this to clean up the two surfaces before I put the new gasket in. Okay, I'm now covered in bits. It's all in my eyes, but yeah, that's looking good at least. Here you go, that's probably clean enough. I can't really see, to be honest, right now, but feels smooth to the touch, so should be all right. Sandwich in our new little gasket. Okay, fortunately, it looks like I'll need to open up the holes a little bit on the gasket. So as you can see here, if I make that side perfect, lining up with the hole, this side doesn't quite line up. These drill bits are not very good. These ones here, I think they're from Aldi, so that's my honest review of these drill bits. Let's try this one. This is an Erbauer drill bit. Well, that hasn't worked at all. Damn. Right, complete change of plan, because as you can see, I've completely knackered that up. I'm going to just use some tin snips and cut a slot inside of that, because it should still just be fine. As long as I make sure it's centered, it'll be okay. You do see gaskets like this with open ends on the sides. That does happen, so yeah, hopefully that won't affect this one. Let's go give it a go. Okay, let's give that a go. Now I've cut the end off of that.
What a day.
As usual, I've caused a problem. This is, yeah, snapped off. Probably because it was already very rusty and weak. But yeah, that's very annoying that I've done that. What I'm going to do to fix that is just get a bigger washer than this, and it should cover more of this area. Let's give that a go. Right, well that seems to be okay with that big wash. I guess only time will tell. So moral of the story there is, if you've got a big, massive impact like that, just be careful when tightening things that are rusty and weak. But yeah, anyway, that's all tight. That should do the trick. So let's give it a go. I'm going to pop my microphone right here. As you would have just seen, it is still leaking, but nowhere near as badly as it was. And it's actually only leaking out of the top, weirdly, not the bottom anymore. To make sure it is fully sealed, I am going to use, along with the gasket, some gun gum. Now, I know a lot of people will say this isn't great, but to be honest, this is a bodge. It's a cheap repair, because the whole idea of this project is to do things on the cheap. So what I'm going to do, grab some paste and put it on both sides. There's that. Let's use it to glue the gasket on, essentially. More of the paste on this side. Right, that's it all pasted up. God, this is horrible. That's it put back on with a bit of paste in between the joints. Just for good measure. I'm going to make it look an absolute mess. And put some paste on the outside as well. Okay, so that's the exhaust back together with the paste all around the outside. It looks horrible, but you know, at least that way we know it's not going to leak. So I'm not going to start it yet. I'm going to give paste a chance to set. So for now, let's move on to this front right wheel bearing. So the first thing we need to do is take the wheel off. You'll notice that I've since got a new wheel bolt, or wheel nut I should say, a lug nut, for the missing one that was there, as you would have seen in the last video. Right, get this wheel out of the way. So the objective here is to get this hub assembly out. So just this piece where the wheel bearing is housed. So we need to get the brakes off, remove the track rod end, the CV joint, and also the lower arm. So I'm going to start off by removing this nut here for the drive shaft. That appears to be a 32mm nut. And we'll whiz it off with this. Wow. When used correctly, what a piece of kit this is. Incredible. Right. Get the nut off. There we are. And oh, that's so good, that's so easy. So you can see I'm pushing that through there, and that is moving the drive shaft in and out. Move on to the next step, which would be, I imagine, to remove the brake caliper. So we can remove the brake caliper with the carrier, so we don't need to separate the caliper and the carrier. We can just remove the whole thing, and I have a little bungee cord set up here wrapped around the spring to hold it up so that it's not just hanging by the hose there. So to remove it, looks like it's just a 15mm bolt. There's one there and one at the bottom there. Remove those two, and then this caliper and carrier should just come out. Hopefully. There we are. Wow, that makes light work of that. That's the caliper now loose. Just take a big flathead and just pry the whole thing off of the disc. Next, I'm just going to put some RP90 over everything. This is like WD-40 but better. So everything that we need to remove, I'm just going to put a bit of this on. Next, I'm just going to take the disc off, put that to one side. Okay, so now we've got a clearer view of the hub itself, which is this piece. Two things we have left to do are remove this track rod end and also remove the lower ball joint as well. So I'm going to start by trying to remove this track rod end. So firstly, on these two nuts, I'm going to hit them with the wire brush drill attachment because they are very, 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 very rusty. Oh, I just flicked it all in my face. Great. Okay, so this one appears to be a 15mm as well, just like the caliper carrier bolts. Next, we just want to break free the rust. So no doubt this ball joint will be completely rusted into this hub. So usually a tap on the bottom or on the side will help. So you can see I've just put the nut back in just a little bit. And now I'm just trying to break free the rust basically. There we go. As you can see, that's now loosened off, as if by magic. Just take that nut off the bottom again and remove the track rod end. Okay, so as you can see, the track rod end is now removed and out of the way. So now we've just got to do the same for the lower ball joint. So this appears to be a 24mm nut. Wow. I'm sorry for always saying wow, but this thing really impresses me. Now, once again, this ball joint can be stuck inside the lower arm. So what is best to do often is just to tap the top of the lower arm, just there, and eventually that should free it. Maybe a tap on the end as well. Right, next thing I'm going to try, good old blowtorch. So now, I'm just using some heat to hopefully break free, again, the rust and everything that's causing the ball joint to bind inside the lower arm. So I'm going to give that a while to heat up, then we'll give it another try. Right, that should be hot enough now. Try not to burn your glove. But yeah, I can think that's coming. So you can see I've just stuck a crowbar in that hole there, and that allows me to push the arm down. And we get that out of there like that. And there you have it. Now that the lower arm is removed, this should be able to move in and out freely. Therefore you can remove the CV axle. You should be able to. There we go. I must have hit that with the hammer. I don't genuinely remember doing it. So as you can see, the only thing now holding this hub piece to the van is this bolt here. And this is just basically a pinch bolt that holds this hub to the shock absorber at the top here. As always, make sure there's plenty of WD-40 or RP90, which is better than WD-40 in my opinion. And then you just need to remove this bolt. Wire brush drill attachment again, and just get rid of some of that loose rust on that bolt. It looks to be another 15mm. Once again, we will use the impact. Okay, it didn't like that very much, so perhaps it is a 14. Right, I've got a breaker bar. Which also appears to be rounding. Right, let's try again with the heat. Try with the impact first. Fingers crossed. Wow, that was super seized. That was incredibly seized. This is an extremely strong impact gun, as you know, and that took a good amount of, well, took a lot of ugga-duggers to get it off. I'm actually very happy that came off. That pinch bolt is going to need to be replaced. It's also going to need to be extracted from my socket, but we'll deal with that later. So now that the pinch bolt is removed from there, all you need to do is make sure there's plenty of penetrating fluid all around it, and then essentially get your pry bar from there, use a hammer to tap it down. And as you can see, that has now dropped down. So the mistake I made was putting the control arm back onto the lower ball joint, because that's now stopping me from pushing the hub far enough down. Get this back out. There we go. That should allow me to just drop this down. There we go. And there we have the hub removed. So here we are inside the garage, and we have the hub on the new 12-ton hydraulic press. First of all, what we want to do, we want to actually separate this part from the rest of the hub and wheel bearing. The way you do this is press right on the center, so you're pressing it out from the center of the bearing. So you're not pressing the bearing itself, just the middle bit. It was a bit challenging really to find a way of propping up the hub. As you can see, it's kind of precariously perched on these metal blocks that came with the press. There's probably better ways of doing this though, so I'm not sure if this is going to work or not. It could go horribly wrong. Yeah, let's find out. What's the worst that could happen? Okay, this 30mm socket seems to work, I think. Let's give it a go.
No.
Give it a go. Oh dear. Right, I'm going to need to find a better way of doing this.
A very, very long time later.
No, seriously, this actually took me hours. So here's a highlight reel of when things actually went right. So I think the problem I was having was actually that this 30mm socket that I was using as a spacer, basically, is too thick. It was touching the sides of the bearing. It wasn't actually pushing on the center. So I've cut this 30mm 12-point socket, and I've, as you can see, ground down the edges to make it nice and thin. So I'm going to use that with this actual spacer thing, and I'm going to try again. Something's happened. Could be good, could be bad. Let's find out. No, it's good. Okay, it's definitely coming out. Right, so I'm going to try and tap it the rest of the way out with a hammer now. Again, I've got the spacer. I've got an old drive shaft bolt. I'm going to use, tap it, see what happens. Ow. 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 Wow, that hurt. I kind of hope I caught that on camera. Blimey. Right, not doing that again. Right, we're back on the hydraulic press again because I really hurt my thumb just then. So I'm not doing that again with the hammer. Just giving this another go. Oh. Oh. It's going. Yes. If you guys know any better way of doing this, by the way, please do comment down below, because I'm sure this is not the best way to use the hydraulic press, if I'm completely honest. Right, it's still in, but I think it's because it's bottomed out on the actual brake disc now. Right, you can see there quite clearly it's coming out quite a fair way now, so it's almost out. Okay, this is coming out now. I've got a threaded bar with a couple of nuts on it. Extend it. This should work now. As you can see, I've put multiple different bits of metal and bits of wood and all sorts to try and prop it up to the right height, which it now is. Should just be a case of pressing it and it should come out. I think that's it. I am so excited. Oh, hey! Flange and the hub are now separated. Fantastic. So the next step to actually remove the wheel bearing is to remove this retaining snap ring here. Now you can see the two little ears of the snap ring there. What you can't see is the rest of the snap ring, and that's because it seems to have just become one with the rest of the hub. So what I'm going to have to do is soak that in some lovely RP90 as usual, and we're just going to have to let it sit and soak, and then I'll come back and I will chisel away at it with the flathead screwdriver and also a wire brush until we get the snap ring to be visible again. Once again, this was much more difficult than I'd thought. In reality, I went on to try and remove that circlip for about a week with various different tools. Even big 9-inch circlip pliers were just bending. In the end, with some help, I managed to hammer a flathead behind the circlip and then slowly worked it free with another flathead, as you can see. I definitely needed 4 hands for this job. So now it's just time to actually press the old bearing out. So we've got the knuckle here. I was calling it a hub the whole time, but Ford calls it a knuckle, and I think a lot of people call it a knuckle. The hub is actually the bit where the wheel mounts to. But I've got this little spacer, which I'll put there, and the idea of the spacer is it just fits perfectly around the edge of the wheel bearing. Pop that there. Now I should have really a metal block or something for this. All I've got is this metal plate, so let's just see what that does. Nope.
Nope.
Gonna have to find some more substantial metal.
So as you can see, I managed to acquire some bits of angle iron instead of using the 1mm thick sheet metal I was trying to use before. This worked really well. As you can see, the bearing is now pressing out nicely. Eventually it bottoms out, so I turn the bit of angle iron upside down, which gives me a bit more of a recess for the old bearing to go into. But even that bottomed out eventually, so I turned the knuckle upside down, used some bits of wood to prop it up, as you can see, and that got the bearing out nicely.
Okay, so before I carry on putting the new bearing in, so I've cleaned up the area where the bearing goes, just so you can see. I'm going to replace the lower ball joint. Use our Circlip pliers. There we are. That was a lot easier than the first one. And I've got this spacer, which fits nicely over the ball joint bit. So hopefully we can press it out. I'm going to use the vise because the hydraulic press is a bit bulky and I can't actually fit the whole knuckle in there in this orientation at all. something's happening. I'm not quite sure what. Either the vise is breaking or this is coming loose. I'm not sure which. Well, I think it's going. There we go. It is indeed moving. I'm just going to use this again, which is basically a 12-point socket that's been cut. Just essentially use it as another spacer for the other side. Just going to cut this a little bit smaller. Always wear eye protection when doing this kind of stupid stuff. So what I'm trying to achieve here is get something that goes in there. Oh, and that does. Perfect. Perfect. Right. Pop our little spacer in. Okay. I think that's fully pressed out now. Well, hey! And there we have the old lower ball joint. So as usual, clean this up with the wire brush. Right, so we're back over here again with another contraption. Let's see if this will work. Right, so I've gone back to the caveman method, which seems to actually be working. Unlike the vise and the hydraulic press, I suppose the old-fashioned ways are sometimes the best. And there you have it, with just a hammer and some spacers. And put on the nice new Circlip. And that's the lower ball joint replaced. Right, it's time for the really exciting bit, because we get to press in the new bearing. I'm just going to pop in the new bearing like that. I've got a perfectly sized spacer. Pop a bit of angle iron on there. That's it, I can feel it's bottomed out. Wow, and there you go, new wheel bearing, fantastic. So there's a new wheel bearing in, that is absolutely fantastic. Now it's time to press in the wheel hub into the centre. Before we do that though, of course, we've got to put in the new Circlip, which is right here. If only it was that easy to get the old one out. Okay, so here's the brand new wheel hub. I decided to get a new one because the old one got kind of chewed up around here and everything, so I just thought I might as well, while I'm doing this, get a shiny new one, because I'm never taking this apart again. So what we've got, a spacer that goes around the centre bore there, look, perfect. Put that face down there like that. And we've got the rest of the knuckle, which we'll place over it like that. And then we've got a spacer that just fits over the centre part of the wheel bearing. A bit of angle iron, and I think we're ready to start pressing. Look at that, easy. God, if only taking it apart was so easy. Okay, that's bottomed out. And there you have it, new wheel hub, new bearing, a new lower ball joint, fantastic. Okay, so back at the van, first thing we want to do is use a strut clamp spreader tool in the strut clamp, like that. And what this does, it opens up the clamp like that. So you've got a much bigger gap and a much bigger opening to be able to slide this onto the shock absorber. So the order we want to do this in is feed the drive shaft in first. There we go, like that. And then slide the knuckle onto the shock absorber. There we are, like that. So now that we've got this slid most of the way up, we can again use a crowbar and slot the lower ball joint into the lower arm, like that. So now that the knuckle is slid onto the shock absorber, the lower arm, the ball joint is in the lower arm, and the drive shaft in it is in as well. I'm just going to put the nut on the end of the drive shaft. And once we're happy that this is fully seated, I'll just give it a tap with the hammer just to make sure. That's all the way. I've got a new bolt. As you'll remember, this one was rounding quite badly. I've got a new one, and it is a 15mm. As it turns out, new pinch bolt in. And do up the lower ball joint nut. As I expected, it is just spinning, so I will need to counter hold that. The new knuckle is in. You missed a bit just there because the camera died, but I've put the track rod end back on, counter held it with a 5mm hex bit on the bottom and just bolted it up. The bottom ball joint is tightened, as is the pinch bolt here, and I've also put the drive shaft nut back on there. Unfortunately though, the grinding noise is still there, which is really annoying. So I'm not quite sure what to do about that. I've had a look and I think the problem is actually this, which is like a support bearing, because obviously you've got two sections for this drive shaft. So it's either this bearing or this CV joint here. I can't tell. It makes a grinding noise, but if you move the drive shaft in and out, you can see there's quite a lot of play in and out. So I'm not sure if that's sort of normal. The other side does move in and out, and I think obviously they do have a bit of in and out play, but it kind of clunks and it does move up and down slightly. So I'm thinking maybe the CV joint is also failed. It's hard to tell whether it's this bearing or the CV joint.
1 week later.
Hello again guys, it's another week or so later and we're back looking at the van again, and this time we have not one but two new drive shafts. So I'm just going to go ahead and replace this whole drive shaft. There's an issue with probably that bearing there, that's a support bearing, or maybe this CV joint, but it doesn't matter really, because to be honest, the drive shafts are so cheap. It was, I think, 80 something pounds for the pair, and to get a new bearing it was 20 pounds, or a new CV is obviously probably 20 pounds again, so it's not really worth it. So it just makes more sense to replace the whole drive shaft, to be honest. I'm going to get started with that now. So once again, we're going to remove the nut from the end of the drive shaft and also the lower ball joint nut. Okay, so that's the end of the drive shaft removed. So next we're going to remove this bracket from the support bearing. It's a 13mm and one on the top. And remove the bracket. Okay, so I've popped a paint tray down to catch the gearbox oil that will come out from where the drive shaft goes into the gearbox. So we should now be able to use this CV joint and this bracket as a bit of leverage. Oh. As you can see, that worked. That did work. Before the camera fell over, obviously. That's broke it free and should be able to pull it out by hand, I think. Oh, there it goes. Oh, there we go. And as expected, we've got gearbox oil pouring out, but that is absolutely fine. That is normal and expected. So here we have the drive shaft out. This is the support bearing that I believe has failed, and I can definitely say it feels very loose, and I'd say there's a very good chance that that is what was causing our issue. If I just put my microphone next to it, that is one very rough bearing. So just comparing the two drive shafts, there are small differences which hopefully won't matter too much, but overall they look pretty much the same. So it's just a case of putting the new drive shaft in. Okay, so we just feed the new drive shaft back in now. Now you've got to be really careful of the seal from the gearbox. Try not to damage it as you're reinstalling. Oh, there we are. Okay, pop the bracket back on for the support bearing. Do up the nuts. Now that the nuts on that support bracket are tight, we can just go ahead and put the end of the drive shaft back into the hub. The nut for the lower ball joint once again. And there you have one new drive shaft. I must say that this van is actually really easy to work on. That was incredibly easy. That was brilliant. That was the most fun I've had doing car work in a while because nothing went wrong. I'm sure now that I've said that though, something will go wrong. Anyway, continuing on with the other side now. So the process for doing the drive shaft on this side is pretty much the same. Undo the nut at the end of the drive shaft, remove the nut for the lower ball joint, lower down the control arm, and just pull the drive shaft out. That's pretty much it. Okay, pry it out.
If only it was that simple. Unfortunately, the offside drive shaft is much more difficult to remove than the near side, as it has a retaining ring on the end that holds it into the gearbox.
Well, that wasn't supposed to happen.
And there's no real trick to removing it other than just brute force.
I probably jinxed myself by saying it was easy to work on. I've been trying for quite some time to remove this inner CV part because there is a retaining clip that goes into the gearbox and it's very, very stiff. I've been reading online, a lot of people have issues with this. So what I've done, as you can see, is I've drilled a hole through it because I don't need to use this anymore and put a U-bolt through it. A U-clamp, sorry. So I'm going to put a ratchet strap or something around this, try and rag it out with that. Fingers crossed. Here goes nothing.
Today's game is Tug of War.
What the hell?
1 hour later.
Well, that was extremely tricky. As you can see, it is now removed from the gearbox. The way I did it, I drilled a hole there, and on the other side, I put a U-bolt through it, hooked on a ratchet strap, wrapped it around the shock absorber, and just used the ratchet strap. And it took quite a lot of pressure, but it did pull it out. And you can see that the clip is still there, which is amazing. So it's all come out in one piece, which is great. Now to fit the new part. So again, I've used the ratchet strap just to hold the strut out the way. So I've got a clear line of sight into the gearbox. So that I've just hooked onto the door latch. That should make it a bit easier to line up the drive shaft. Let's give it a go. That's gone in, fantastic. And you'll know when it's clicked into place because you won't be able to pull it back out. So there we go. And there you have it, a second new drive shaft. So now that we've got all the drive shafts in and everything's coming back together, we need to remember to fill the gearbox oil back up because obviously all the gearbox oil has drained out, or not all of it, but a lot of it. So let's just fill it back up. This, by the way, is an 8mm hex bit. So the wheels are now back on the van. It's pretty much ready to go. I do need to torque the nuts on the end of the drive shafts, which I think are like 200 Newton meters or something like that. I'd have to look it up. But before I do that, I'm just going to start it up and see if that has actually fixed our noise. If it has, that would be amazing. Good so far. So what I need to do, put it into first gear. That is absolutely fantastic. And interestingly, both wheels are now spinning at the same time. Before, this one had a tendency to spin It really wanted to spin a lot easier than that one. So perhaps there was a lot of friction in the CV joint on that side. That's interesting, but that has resolved that issue, and the exhaust fix, while it looks terrible, is working. So that I'm very, very pleased with. So if you've enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. I'm going to be doing a few more videos on this van and got some other content coming up soon that should be really interesting. So yeah, please subscribe, like, and any questions, put them in the comment section down below. But for now, guys, I'll catch you later.